exploring robots who are out to destroy the planet for our own nefarious purposes. And you want to correct that. You know, it's not accurate, mostly. And it's something that we have to work against. And just the fact that you can have a conversation with a scientist, it's like being able to sit down with them and have a beer with them. That all of a sudden you become a human being and you can share ideas back and forth. And that really helps the image of science. So let me give you an example here. I mentioned Joe Thornton as a great example. Joe Thornton does not have a blog, but he's fairly reputable on the internet. And why is that? It's because he published an excellent paper, several excellent papers actually, which I'm summarizing in that tiny little diagram up there, because I'm not going to get into the science behind it. But what Joe Thornton has done is a bunch of work on the molecular genetics of the evolution of corticoid receptors, so steroid receptors. And what he accomplished in the paper a while back is he basically worked out amino acid by amino acid precise changes that had to have occurred in the class of steroid receptors. He knows exactly how these things evolved. He knows the order of the changes that had to have occurred over evolutionary time. And he's documented all this stuff beautifully. It's a great paper. It's a classic paper. When the intelligent design creationists got this, they had their own remarks, which you see up there. Michael Behe said, "Oh, this is piddling," which is remarkable because what the intelligent design creationists have often been screaming about is, "Oh, you've got to give me a step-by-step account of every single change that occurred in the evolution of a structure." And here's a case where Joe Thornton has provided a step-by-step description of every single amino acid change in the evolution of this particular receptor. Stephen Meyer, another intelligent design creationist from the Discovery Institute, says it's trivial. They also say things like, "Oh, the work is great," in quotation marks, but shows that Darwinian processes are highly unlikely and supports intelligent design. Michael Behe actually reversed the conclusion that what Thornton was showing is, oh, this is fairly easy to do. It just takes a couple amino acid changes, and poof, you've got a separate class of functional receptors. And Behe is turning this around and saying, now it shows the exact opposite. It shows it couldn't have evolved. Well, here's what Joe Thornton did that was marvelous. That what he did is he wrote a reply in English, not scientese, but a nice, plain, simple, clear description of the work. And what he did is he sent it to a journalist named Carl Zimmer. Another guy I recommend, he's got a blog called The Loom. He's a science journalist, but he really knows the science very well. He's written a number of excellent books on science. Carl published his summary. And it just lit up the internet. Because here were all these intelligent design creationists saying, well, this work is bogus. And so people started searching for that work. But when Carl Zimmer mentioned something, Carl Zimmer has a very good reputation on the internet, especially. I shouldn't say especially, he's got a great reputation everywhere. But anyway, he's got this great reputation on the internet, so when people go searching for this work by Thornton, what turns up? Carl Zimmer, Joe Thornton's actual reply, which goes through step by step, and again, I'm not going to go through in detail, but you can look it up. You can just search for Thornton and Zimmer, and it will turn up this link for you. And he describes all the things that Mike Behe got wrong. It's beautiful. It's a complete deconstruction of intelligent design right there on the web. And anybody can read that, and it's beautiful. And that's why Joe Thornton is fairly well known on the internet, because his experiments, by virtue of this discussion, have become very well known. Let me mention another guy, Richard Lenski. Richard Lenski has, again, done this amazing experiment, this beautiful experiment in bacterial evolution. What he's basically done is maintain populations of bacteria. Let's all dance. No. It's okay. He's maintained these populations of bacteria in the lab, grown them, and he's preserved samples and frozen them. So he's basically done this experiment where he can watch the entire evolution of a strain of bacteria over, I think it's over 50,000 generations now. And at any time, what he can do is by going to his freezer and pulling out these subsamples, he can recreate an ancestral population, ask, okay, what has changed? It's gorgeous. Again, another classic, beautiful example of evolution worked out in the laboratory. So Richard Lenski did this great work, and he became a target of an organization called Conservapedia, Just because who's heard of Conservapedia? Oh yeah, infamous, isn't it? It's if you want something funny, go read it. What it is they said that Wikipedia is full of liberal bias, so they are creating their own version of reality, where it's conservative.
I reject your reality.
And sort of insane. They've also got another project where they are writing the conservative Bible, because the Bible, even the Old Testament, is too liberal. So anyway, Conservapedia sent out a letter to Richard Lenski and saying, we want your samples. We don't believe you did the experiment. We don't believe it's right. So we want you to send us all your bacteria so we can repeat the experiments. The guys behind Wikipedia are not scientists. The one guy, Andy Schlafly, who heads it, he runs a home school, which is not equipped for this. You know, he does not own a liquid nitrogen freezer or anything like that. So he's basically asking Lenski to put in this huge amount of effort and send all these bacterial samples to him. Lenski wrote back a reply. Again, I won't put this whole thing up there for you. You can go look it up. If you go look up Lenski and Conservapedia or find this particular URL, what you'll find is his complete reply to this. It's, again, very lengthy. It's a thorough deconstruction of all the misconceptions of creationists. And once again, this made him an internet hero. This stuff was linked to all over the place. And now if you go looking for Lenski and E. coli, you go looking for Lenski and bacteria, you go looking for Lenski and Conservapedia, this is what turns up, is this particular article, which completely tears Andy Schlafly apart, which is great fun. He's such a jerk. Anyway, so this isn't hard to do. Richard Lenski knows his work inside and out. And writing down a simple, plain English description of the work, not that challenging for him. And he already knows all the objections these guys make, so he really lays out an excellent story. So the science can be easily humanized, can be easily brought out in public, and people are anxious for this stuff. Even in the United States, where we're full of creationists, they are not devoid of basic human curiosity. Creationists will hear about experiments in science, and what they will do is they can either rely on their preacher who's telling them a bunch of lies about it, or they will, as they are doing nowadays more and more, is they'll get on the web, they'll type it into Google, and they get back Richard Lenski's or Joe Thornton's own discussion of the work. It makes a huge difference. Again, it's really easy to humanize people. I'll mention this. This is a hilarious site. This is a research institute that has a project where they bring in students to see what it's like to do science. And they do this cute thing of asking all the students to write descriptions and draw pictures of scientists before they visit and after they visit. And it turns out that scientists are human beings after all.
They even play racquetball. Yeah.
So this is another lesson is get out there and make yourself known. You are not necessarily the crazy bald guy with strange spectacles and fuming chemicals in your hand in a lab coat. There are scientists in this room right now, I'm sure, and you don't look anything like them. And one last suggestion, don't avoid controversy. It turns out that another thing that really makes information popular is if there's some kind of controversy behind, some conflict. This is just human nature. We like to see a good fight. And so being out there and being aggressive in your ideas is a spectacle. People will come to hear what you say. I know this. This is the secret of the popularity of my blog, is being able to inflame tempers and get people out there to argue with me. So don't avoid controversy. As this cartoon shows, it's really easy, especially if you're an atheist. All you got to do in the United States is mention you're an atheist, and boom, you are Satan incarnate, and they'll come out after you. One example of this that I'll mention is where I embraced the controversy, and people laughed. Has this movie made it to Norway?
No.
Some say no, some say yes. It's probably out on DVD around here or something. Yeah. It's a really bad movie with Ben Stein, who's this terrible croaking frog guy who he made his reputation by making a few comedy movies years ago, which he had bit parts and that's all. They made a movie where they essentially try to paint everyone who believes in evolution as being evil and trying to shut down the discussions and so forth. When this movie came out, when it was made, they did this by promoting it under false pretenses to various scientists and getting interviews.